Hello and welcome to Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis, and as always, I'm your host. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a short one, not even by necessity, but by stroke of good fortune, because I am undergoing kind of a flu right now, so I'm trying to power through that, but thankfully there's not that much to talk about in terms of reviews or news this week, so fingers crossed that we can get through this pretty cleanly. Now, like I said, we don't have much in terms of news. The only interesting tidbit with the movie side of things is that Margot Robbie is doing a new cinematic adaptation of Tank Girl through her production company. It's in the early stages of development with only a director tap so far, but no real movement outside of that. Given Robbie's art productions, including the fact that she's co-producing Warner Brothers' Harley Quinn movies, last I heard, this seems like a logical next step. Fingers crossed that something comes out of this that fans will like. And the only other thing this week in terms of news is some actually exciting comic news. It seems that while the promised Dark Knight Volume 4 is still yet to come to fruition, Frank Miller is going to be releasing a new one-shot while we wait. Titled Dark Knight The Golden Child, it will feature art from Rafael Grampa and concern the fallout of Superman's second child with Wonder Woman, Jonathan Kent, coming into his powers a few years after the end of the third volume. Some preview art hints that he might be going on a darker path, similar to his sister in her younger years. Whether this is going to be a proper epilogue, a self-contained story, or planting seeds for the fourth volume have yet to be stated, but the regular cast of characters have been confirmed and it's due for release this December. I can't wait. I thought that the Master Race was a complete boring slog outside the mini comics that Miller had control over, and it's great to see him back in the writer's chair without Azzarello to gunk up the works. One thing that I found fascinating about this announcement was the reaction, with some people acting very negatively, which I understand. Miller is a source of controversy, and he's never been something that people have a very neutral opinion on. But the funniest reaction was someone saying that Miller hasn't even made a good comic since the 90s, and we should just leave him in the past. Which, I mean, I guess that's mostly true, and I could see how you could even argue that Superman Year 1 is just decent, but then that statement also kind of sounds like you're ignorant or just ignoring the amazingness that was the Xerxes miniseries. I mean, if you don't like to read good comics or to acknowledge good comics, that's your choice, but you don't have to broadcast it that loudly. I'm excited and I can't wait to see how that shapes out. And hopefully we do see this series land on a solid foot, because it deserves that outside of the Master Race, which was a whimper. Now we can move on to what I read this week. The only thing we have this week really is Hawkman number 16. And this series has kind of turned into what I feared it would be. When the tie-in to this ridiculously dumb Snyder mega event was announced, I was worried, because Hawkman's strength in this ongoing has been that it's been so solid, focused, and pointed. Getting lost in an event never works out for a series like this, or even any series. But the previous two issues were swaying me, were giving me hope that I was wrong and that it would navigate through it freely. And who boy, this issue let me down. While it has some fun moments, like bringing Gentleman Ghost back into the Hawkman fold for a cameo, it's mainly just set up for the next leg of Snyder's event. It feels like it could be coming from a more direct, character-focused place. This tinge of conflict and brashness that Hawkman is displaying here and is trying to deal with here, but it just rings false when you know that it's just another thing that needs to get checked off before the next event happens. Instead of saying more about Carter, it's just like, ooh, now he's some sort of the infected thing, and I struggle to even care. I'm not even going to be rating that event anyway, so it's just wasting time and cheapening the structural integrity of this series as a singular whole. With the next arc or couple of issues going into being about infected Hawkman, I doubt I'll follow along until this all blows over. Maybe it'll surprise me though, and Shire will pick up the torch while Carter is fucking around, being all evil and shit. Fingers crossed. Anyway, that was the script before the solicits came out. And apparently that's the case, so you know what? I'm back on. But seriously, it just feels like this wasn't the most natural way you could introduce Shara, and like, it just feels very wonky. But fingers crossed. I can't wait to see her come back. But overall, this issue wasn't a bad issue. It's just a dull one without any impact for the series or the character. Actual impact that, illuminates something. So 2 thumbs middle. And now we can move on into what I watched this week. The only thing again is Titan Season 2, Episode 2, Rose. This is the first proper episode of Season 2. Even starting off with a time skip, so we can just pick off with a status quo check with our cast. And maybe it's not as entertaining as it could be. This episode overall just feels very sedentary compared to the premiere, and even compared to the most average episodes of Season 1. A lot of that has to do with the way the plot unfolded, with the cast being on the run, or at least on the road for most of Season 1. Here, everyone is just where they are. It's just a bunch of scenes with them sitting around living life, which I have no problem with, but it's also that it's not really that full of dynamics or entertaining interplay for the most part. I think the two most notable instances would have to be the rift that begins to form between Hawk and Dove, which is the most overt, and Jason trying to settle in and finding his role in the Titans as a group. The former is actually pretty emotionally hefty, despite how ridiculous and stupid they made their backstory in the first season, while the latter is just good fun and actually decent character building for Jason, because he's the one character in this cast that's playing catch up here because he was kind of a glorified cameo in season 1. But other than that, the episode just feels tepid and uninteresting, filling time before it can actually get the plot moving, which is kind of disappointing because this is the second episode of the season, so it doesn't really have that excuse, and another reason why they should have restructured these seasons beforehand. The most entertaining parts of this episode is that we do get more plot hooks thrown in, which could be fun because it's creating a chaotic crashing effect for the characters as so many things come into play at the same time that it could possibly be insanely enjoyable to see them try and deal with that. But that's something that we have to keep our fingers crossed for because it all happens at the very end, and it just makes me wonder, like, okay, so I know I wanted a more streamlined season for this, something a bit more focused, but I don't want that at the cost of being very stilted and maybe too straightforward. So, fingers crossed, but overall this episode was kind of disappointing, and so 2 thumbs middle. Anyway, like I said, I'm kind of under the weather right now, so I didn't even put out the call for questions this week because I don't think I can make it through with this flu right now. So I just want to say thank you to everyone out there who's ever sent in a question, comment, or topic to this show. It means so much to me, and honestly, it would have been the perfect pickup for me right now if the way I'm feeling. Hopefully next week I'll feel a lot better and we can get back to business. I just want to say thank you guys so much, and it's the greatest feeling in the world, so again, I'm truly appreciative. And if anyone out there has their own questions, topics, or comments they want to hear discussed on the show, you can always find me on Twitter at THE_SNICKMAN. I want to give a shout out to the cover artists for the show at DOTEMCEE. Please check them out. They're awesome. And just give them some traffic because they really deserve it. Anyway, that's it for this week. Hopefully I get through this for next time. But again, have a great week and see you then.